Welcome to the Ultimate Music Teacher's Productivity and Profitability podcast. I'm your host, Glory St. Germain. Tune in to discover how you can unleash your teaching potential and turn your passion for music education into profit. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. I am so excited to introduce my very special guest and my dear friend, Shirley Wang. Shirley is an operatic soprano, a pianist, a three-time international bestselling author in the Power of Why Musicians book series, and one of our very own UMTC elite educators. Now, Shirley has performed across the U.S., including the prestigious Carnegie Hall. She is also the host of All Around Classical Podcast, an interview series featuring world-class performing artists, which airs on YouTube and as a podcast on all the major podcast distribution platforms. So make sure to check it out. Shirley is the founder of Simply Gifts Music Studio, which offers in-person and online voice, piano, and ultimate music theory program. But wait, there's more. Shirley is currently on the roster of George Martinic Artist Management in New York City. Woo! Wow, wow, wow. Welcome, Shirley. How are you doing?
Hello, Glory. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. And I'm just so honored that you put me on your program.
Oh, it is my pleasure to have you as my very special guest on the Ultimate Music Teacher's Productivity and Profitability podcast. And you certainly have done both of those on the global stage. So let's dive in. I'm just curious, and if you can tell us about your journey in the music industry and how it led you to become an operatic soprano, a pianist, best-selling author, and podcast host. This might be a long one, folks. Get yourself a coffee.
Let's keep it short because the story gets a little complicated, but very straightforward at the same time. So I've been taking piano lessons since I was 4 years old. I loved music since I was a small child. And fast forward, moved to the United States when I was 15. But what I really wanted to become when I was growing up was to be a writer. And I also loved visual art. What I discovered was I could find all of the above on the operatic stage with literature of different languages, with a visual and with incredible music. And so I kind of fell into opera because other people heard me sing just randomly and started to recruit me and offer me free instructions just to see if I could go somewhere. And then it just kept going from there. So, and during the pandemic, like everybody else, I started feeling a little isolated and lonely. So it started off with just conversations with friends I have not spoken to. And it was a Facebook interview series, but it was really a conversation thing. Then it expanded from there to include a lot of really incredible musicians from around the world.
Well, congratulations, because I know just starting off with my podcast series that, first of all, we're passionate about sharing these conversations, but it is something that we get into because we're really wanting to make a difference in people's lives as music educators and as musicians and, just really an opportunity to further your career. And your interview series, All Around Classical, has been gaining popularity and critical acclaim. How did you come up with this idea for a series, and sort of what inspired you to feature performing artists who actually make the world more colorful, as you say?
I think initially during the pandemic, we were really missing the performances and people were sharing their music. And it was fun to feature people's music and their journey. And then it just kind of grew from there because I think people, there are a lot of incredible artists out there. They may not be world famous, but their performance level is so incredibly high. It's nice to get a chance to introduce what they do as well as who they are, and often what made them into who they are and what they do. And that was something that I'm inspired by who they are and what they do.
Yeah, I think so much of that too, Shirley. I so appreciate you giving people a backstage pass to the artist's journey, because so often we see them on stage and we applaud wildly, but we really don't know at heart center, what does it take to actually get up on that stage? And what was maybe one of your favorite interviews that you did?
One of my favorite interviews was with Eugene Friesen, who is a cellist, 6 times Grammy Award winning cellist. And I saw him perform February of 2020, right before the shutdown. And then we had an opportunity to really get into his journey and what he was passionate about. And his music was incredible. He improvised on the cello, but it sounded like Bach, except it was improvised. And he's written textbooks on teaching classical musicians how to improvise. And he also teaches that at Berklee College. So that was a very wonderful conversation to be exposed to both his music and his process.
Yeah. And, I think that's the beauty of it for other musicians that are looking to maybe take that leap into becoming a professional performer or just learning how can you improvise, in classical, it's almost unheard of. So sharing that journey, I'm sure really inspired a lot of your listeners as well. One of the things that I do want to commend you on is you're the founder of Simply Gifts Music Studio. And I know that you're offering both in-person and online music programs. So how do you think the digital world is impacting music education now, especially you're in California, right? Where you mentioned that there are some unique aspects. Can you tell us about that?
I think it broadens both the student and the teacher's worldviews, because I'm both giving online lessons as taking online instructions myself. So I'm both giving and receiving. And my student just did extremely well on the really important adjudication. And he's never had an in-person lesson. But on the other hand, I am taking lessons from my voice teacher while I'm away from him, because I do in person in combination with online, which allows me to stay in touch. Now, before online, I could only see him maybe once a month. I have to travel to New York and I have to get on a plane, and I have this incredible sessions with him. But now we're able to have check-in lesson sessions in between. And this allows me to stay in touch with the opera world that's happening internationally in New York City. LA is a more commercial town, and there's so many opportunities here that's different. And this way, I'm able to take advantage of different parts of the musical world without having to coordinate a very difficult traveling schedule. So that's personally, I'm benefiting from that. And I'm also hoping I'm giving back in my online and in-person lessons for my students who are benefiting both from my continued experience to be learning as a student, as well as just that opportunity to keep going without interruptions just because you're not in the same space.
Yeah. It is so incredible when we think in this day and age how blessed we are to have this online world that we live in as musicians and singers and educators for collaboration and sharing ideas. And I remember the first time you and I met, we knew each other in the online world. And then there we were in California hanging out and, got to have a great time together. And that, I think, is the exciting part, is now you actually get to meet people, work together on projects. And then when you finally do get to meet in person, it's just a little celebration and so much fun. Yeah, so much fun. You mentioned a little bit about taking responsibility for your career in music, just in your own hands. Could you just elaborate on this and share some of the key decisions or strategies that have contributed to your success?
I love to. And I think I shared with you about a story when I was 4 years old. And I think sometimes a personality is set from a very early age. I was 4. Parents got me piano lessons with this wonderful lady, but she would hit my hand with a pencil every time I made a mistake, whether it's posture or whatever. And my parents didn't believe in that type of upbringing. So one day I stood up and I told her, "Thank you, Miss Lee, for coming to give me lessons, but you don't have to come back anymore." My parents were mortified, but they went along with it because they understood where I was coming from as a child. But I really believed I wanted to play the piano. And just because it wasn't the right teacher, even for me at age 4, it didn't mean I shouldn't continue playing. So I kept playing, and my parents got me other teachers. So fast forward, I had auditioned for a traveling group, and they traveled to prestigious venues like the Lincoln Center, like the Washington Opera House and La Scala, all those important venues. And they were looking for a soprano soloist to sing with their orchestra. And I was offered the position. Wow. And it was an open-ended contract. And as I continued to explore their work and also their belief system, I came to realize it wasn't for me. And when I decided to turn down that offer, it felt very challenging because this is a dream opportunity for most people, and I've worked very hard towards it. And then I realized, okay, so to get into a creative field means you should be creating. So I started creating my own concerts. I started putting my own ideas and concepts of what a performance can be about into my programming. And I started doing multimedia concerts and start creating all those things. That taught me a lot about the business and also taught me a lot about my own artistic personality. So I think that was the most important growth period artistically for me. Yeah. That's where I think people sometimes have to take a hard look at ourselves as who we are as people, who we are as artists, and take on responsibilities for who we want to be based on those things.
Yeah. That's powerful, Shirley, to know that you, even at such a young age, were already snapping your fingers saying, no.
I would be a nightmare student for myself if I was the teacher. Oh my goodness. So I don't think I've ever had a more troublesome student than I would have been. So.
But what's beautiful about that is that you already knew you were passionate about music. Mm-hmm. But I think sometimes as musicians, you do the gig because it maybe is paying you and you got to pay the bills. But when it really comes down to the artistry that you have designed and you're so passionate about, I mean, congratulations to you, Shirley, for saying, I have a vision and I'm going to make it happen. And I always say, in the words of Bruno Mars, don't believe me, just watch, right? Like you can do anything if you put your mind to it. And if it's really your artistry that's going to shine through, and you certainly have done that. And the proof is in the pudding, as they say, because your roster with George Martinek Artist Management in New York, I mean, that must be pretty exciting for you. How did you get connected with them? And how was having an artist manager impacted your career now?
I knew George years ago when I was offered that very contract I just spoke about. And then I took off and did a bunch of my own stuff. And then I decided it's time to refocus on opera and some aspects of the industry. So I went back and started working with my old teacher as well. And then in the hallway of the building, I ran into good old George, Mr. Martinek.
Yes.
And so, we hugged and said hello. And then he Googled me.
Oh.
He Googled me and he saw the books that we have collaborated on. He saw the podcast. And he said, while most other sopranos have laid down and cried themselves to sleep during the pandemic, he thought I had reinvented myself. And he thought it was admirable. And then he asked if he could hear me. And then everything just started happening from there on. So I'm grateful to you, Glory, because you played a big part without even knowing it played a big part in this.
Well, I'm honored to be in the journey with you, because I know we just love collaborating on ideas. And, when you and I had the opportunity to hang out for a few days in California, I remember we sat, I think, for like 4 hours just brainstorming about, the music industry. And it's so important to network and share ideas. Really, that's where creativity just evolves. And thank goodness you gave George a hug in the hallway, because Obviously, things have really grown in that direction for you. And I think the arts and music industry, it can be highly competitive.
Yes.
And so, for our listeners, maybe what advice do you have for aspiring musicians and artists who are trying to make their mark in the field?
I think to create a support system. It is going to be sometimes exciting, sometimes easy, and most other times very challenging journey ahead and continually. And I have realized that people who keep going and therefore finding their spots in that world are the people who have either started off with a support system or created a support system for themselves. And I think that also ties into the insistence of inviting people who are positive to be part of your environment.
Yeah.
That is part of the support. It's not the people who are always saying yes. It's not people who are feeding you into something that's not realistic, but it's people who are positive, like yourself, like somebody who believe in making it work, making it happen. And I think that at the end of the day is going to be really, really, really important, because whatever is not working out at the moment, if you have the right support system, you are going to be able to keep going until you find a solution.
Yes.
And I think that's what makes a person stick.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that answer, Shirley, because I personally feel that the most important thing is the 5, I call it the circle of fifths. The 5 people that you hang out with should be elevating you, and they should be better than you and smarter than you. I know my husband, he's a professional entertainer, and he used to tell our kids, who are also musicians and in the music industry, always play with people that are better than you, because that's how you learn, that's how you aspire, that's how you grow, and you continue to go to the next level. And negativity isn't going to serve you. And you really become like the 5 people that you hang around with. And so choose your circle of fifths wisely, because it's what's going to put you to places I know where you've been. I mean, you've performed on the prestigious venues like Carnegie Hall. I mean, that in itself is a major accomplishment. Can you share one of your most memorable experiences with us?
Believe it or not, it's not at the most prestigious venue. It was actually at a smaller place. I can't even remember what I actually did, but the program I performed had really made an impact. And the lady came up to me and she asked if she could give me a hug. And then she held my hand and she just started crying. She says, "Your music was so beautiful. And there are so many terrible things going on in this world, and there are terrible things going on in my life, but your music is so beautiful, it made me forget. This needs to be happening all the time." That was a very important moment for me. It helps me to know it did make a difference, and this must be the reason why I continue to make music.
I think, I'm getting little tears in my eyes when you're saying that, Shirley, because music is such a powerful impact to heal, to take us, out of our depression, our sadness, to celebrate with us. I've experienced firsthand how people that have memory loss can still tap their foot and remember the words to a song from long ago, even though they can't remember, what they had for breakfast, so to speak. And it's powerful when you share those stories and you share your music, and you always perform from your heart. I mean, I've seen you so many times, and I'm just like, we can feel your vibrations, and it's impactful. It's impactful on our hearts, on our minds. And, how wonderful that you received that feedback. I mean, she could have kept it to herself and left saying, "Oh, that was amazing, and I feel so great." But I'm so glad that she shared that with you, to recognize how you had impacted her, and that just means everything. And one of the things that I was so grateful was when you submitted and, shared your story. I mean, you're an international best-selling author and you've been in, 3 of our Power of Why Musicians series books, and you've clearly resonated with our readers. Can you tell us a little bit more about the inspiration behind your chapters in these books? Because your message was a powerful one. I'll be sharing the show notes so that you can check out the Power of Why Musicians series, because you have got to read Shirley's chapters. They're incredible.
I think I always think about, first of all, each series had a theme of the type of impact collectively this book was striving to make. So then I started thinking about the moments in my life where I experienced that impact and what caused it, what kind of events were creating that experience for me. And so I think maybe this is as a performer, it's a combination of having a very subjective communication, because you have to really be yourself or be the character, but the character is connected to you. But at the same time, you have to care about your audience. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the same feeling, the same idea I tried to emulate when I thought about what to write about for each one of those books. And, so that's where they came from.
Yeah. And I think too, even so often, I'll spoiler alert, one of the chapters, Imposter,
yeah,
really resonated with me because, I have felt that deeply so many times in my life, and then realized you have a choice. You can either feel that imposter syndrome and stay there, and then nothing is going to change. And in order for something to change in your life, you have to change and get over yourself and take the next steps. And I think many musicians and artists have, influential mentors and teachers in their life. And it was really the point of doing this collaborative, the Power of Why Musicians series. So you could get a backstage look at how has Shirley Wang risen and accomplished all of these things at such a speed, and obviously been recognized for such, and you're performing and so on. And perhaps if you think about, the stories about the teachers and mentors who played a significant role in your artistic journey, can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. There have been so many who have really impacted me, including yourself, because I watch what you do and you're fearless. Actually, that's not entirely the description. I watched you set fearless goals and went forward even if you were afraid. And that was inspiring for me. So you are definitely one of the people who have made a big impact in how I moved forward. And there's also my voice teacher. And I remember one of my first lessons with him, maybe 10 years ago, he said something. He said, an artist cannot sing if he or she was frightened. First of all, he didn't say a student cannot sing. He said an artist. And I think that's important, both for the students, which I was at the moment, and a teacher, which I will be in different moments, to recognize every person who walks through the door is an artist. And being frightened stops our creativity, starts our ability to produce. So that was another really important moment for me. And one more person who's passed away, and his name was Bill Yanuzzi. He was the Baltimore Opera music director for a great many years. And he said to me, Shirley, there is no difference between you and the greats. The only thing you don't have is you need to have the right teacher who can help you to develop what you already have. And if the teacher is in Siberia, and that's where you need to go. Yeah. That made a huge difference. It opened up my eyes to a bigger world and also the confidence to move forward.
Wow. I think you and I should start a movement. And the movement is that we are no longer going to be teaching students. We are going to be teaching artists. I can't even imagine how my mindset would have shifted if my teacher had said, Glory, you're an artist, because that just makes me sit up a little taller in my chair. And
Right.
I think that's pretty cool. Ask yourself the question, how many artists would you like to be teaching this year? Oh, I
Right.
would love to have, 15 artists that I would be teaching this year. I love that idea. I'm going to
You're
share
right.
that. I can't take credit. That's your thing, but I'm going to share your idea because it's really true. If you approach every student that you teach as an artist and
Mhm.
allow them to, have artistic freedom, of course, with guidance, but also teachers are so important. And the fact that we're
Mm.
sharing this, like, NEPD, which you've heard me say a million times, never ending professional development is the
Right.
key to growing.
Right.
It's the key to being an artistic leader in our industry and inspiring those young and upcoming artists, because we're going to change the word.
Right. Right.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I love it. Being both a pianist and an operatic soloist, I mean, it's an impressive combination of talents, obviously. So when you look back, how do you manage to balance these two musical pursuits? Do you find that
You don't.
oh, you
You
don't?
don't. You don't balance it. You just insist on they both are important to me.
Yes.
And therefore, when opportunities rise, I'm going to say yes, even if the preparation is going to kill me.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. You're so impressive, Shirley. So, we've been on a bit of a journey together, you and I, today, and
Yes.
want to thank our listeners for tuning in, of course. And in closing, I'm curious, what's coming up for you next, Shirley? You've had a lot of achievements. So what's your next big mountain to climb?
Big mountain to climb is, of course, there's several. The first one will be the next audition season, which will be this fall.
Yeah.
And I will have to face a lot of my own inner demons because there will be built-in rejections and plenty. So that's big. But then I also have some exciting projects. I have several programs that I've created, which have places that they're going to. One of them is on the theme of the Silk Road. I connected with my Chinese heritage during the pandemic so much more than I ever have. So this will be a program with Chinese music that's written in the Western style, but I'm also incorporating instruments that was invented with heritage along the Silk Road. So that's really exciting. And I'm also hoping it will grow into a solo album that would incorporate those elements. So that's next. And I'm also working on a women's themed concert. So there will be a couple women composers who are alive and I'll be working with, as well as some other composers who are women from the past 100 years. Their perspective and their writing is different than the Clara Schumann's and the Fanny Mendelssohn's because they are much more contemporary to the world we live in and the struggles we experience. So that's another program. And those are very exciting things for me. Another one is, this one is fun. This one is I'm working with another singer-pianist combo. We're playing piano for hands. We're also playing pieces accompanying each other on the same concert. So that one will be fun. And we're working with living composers' work as well as things that we're working on. One half that's Spanish themed, and the other half is all the living composers that are friends to us. So
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. May I ask why you have more hours in your day than I do? I get
I don't really think I do, but like some people may know, I don't share this very publicly. I've had some health struggles.
Yeah.
So it's made me only do things that make a difference that matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really have a lot of time in playing around with things that are not meaningful.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a big switch and big change in my life in how I create projects and how I move forward nowadays. Yeah. So I don't know if I have more hours in the day, but I try to make the few hours where I feel I'm still alive and useful to mean something.
Yeah. Well, I'm just so grateful that you've, shared your story with us, Shirley. I want to say congratulations on all of your success and all your upcoming projects. That sounds so exciting. And I can't wait to find out when you're performing where, because I really would love to see you performing live. And I'm going to make it happen, no matter if you're in New York or if you're in California or you're wherever you're going to be playing. It would just be my honor to sit in the stage and applaud you wildly. I know that it's kind of funny. I was sharing with one of my students, and we were talking about, being in the audience at a concert, classical. And, at the end, there's that polite silence because music ends with silence.
Right.
And then you applaud, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said, wouldn't it be funny? But wouldn't it be funny if you had a rock concert audience that was cheering through the whole thing? It's just so different, isn't it? How we just really see the audience appreciate the music just in a different way, at a same deep level, but just in a different way. So thank you so much again, Shirley. How can people connect with you and learn more about you and what's all coming up?
So you can go on my link tree because it has connections to all different aspects of what I do. And my link tree is linktr.ee/Shirley Wang. So if you go on just regular link tree way of searching, you can just search /Shirley, S capital, Wang, W capital. So, and thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Shirley. We'll make sure to put that in the show notes, along with the link to Shirley's The Power of Why Musicians books, so you can go check them out and read her stories as well. Thank you again so much, Shirley, and all the best to you in your upcoming activities and events. Thank you.
Thank you, Glory.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Ultimate Music Teacher's Productivity and Profitability podcast. Together, we can transform lives through the power of music education. I invite you to explore what's possible for your musical journey inside our UMT community. Simply join our Ultimate Music Teachers private Facebook group, where we network, answer questions, host live events, and connect on a deeper level. Here's to your ultimate music teaching success with productivity and profitability. Till next time, teach with passion.